So, hello and welcome to the Happiness Telesummit. My name is Erica Glessing. I have a very special guest with me today, Tori Hartman. Welcome, Tori.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where and tell me where you live again.
Well, I'm in Los Angeles, and it's really funny because as we just prep, we talk a little bit before the interview, and one of the things I want to say to everybody listening as well is that we were just saying I have construction next door. The house next door to me is being torn down. So if we hear, it's very appropriate, I think, with reconstructing who we are, that you may hear boom in the middle of our talk, and it's all related to what we're talking about, probably. So, like you said, a what?
Alrighty, so Tori is a world-renowned psychic, author, and spiritual teacher. She's the only American psychic interviewed by the New York Times, Los Angeles Business Journal, both. She helps celebrities launching hit shows. I'm having so much fun with Tori.
You're so funny.
She was just named, like, what was it? Top personality of the year?
I've been nominated as
Yeah.
a personality of the year from Kindred Spirit magazine.
Yeah, how much fun is that?
It's,
You know,
it's,
we get to have
it's
her
an honor.
here.
It's a real
Yeah.
honor, and it's so funny. It's like appropriate that what you were about to say was, what she helps, and it's Jeff Lewis from Flipping Out, the show Flipping Out, and it's funny because we started with the conversation around construction, and that's what he does, construction. So of course we're like in that deconstructing and reconstructing our lives. I think is such a great, and it's funny, Erica, one of the things that I appreciate about what we talked about right before we started this is that the idea of, whatever comes up is what is in the moment the most important thing for whoever's listening to hear. And
Exactly, right?
and that's because that's a universal truth.
I have to tell a little tiny bit more about your background because I love the fact you made chakra wisdom oracle cards and toolkit. So I love that. Yeah, hold that up again. I
Oh,
want to see
sure.
a
This
look
is
at
the little
that.
booklet that goes with
Yeah.
the cards.
I
Card.
love it. I love it. I love her divination stuff. That is just so cool. And she's doing some work now called Life Purpose Divination. And I'm just so in love with this whole concept. So why don't you just start us out with happiness and just kind of give us why don't you just give us a worldview of happiness just from your perspective? What is it? How do we get there? How is it different from what people might think?
Wow. I think that it's even different than we think. If I had to define it for myself, it's that, we're told that happiness is a certain thing, and we see examples outside of us of what we think happiness would be. But then the picture sometimes that we hold in our mind isn't actually what happiness is. So I'm going to give you an example. This is a perfect example for everybody to get, is that when I went through a very rough time in my life, I bought this one picture. I'm going to show you this picture. It's on my wall over there. You can see it over there. It's a picture of the ocean, obviously, and it's really beautiful. It's a large picture, and it made me happy. And I bought it because I was very depressed at the time, and I was going through a rough patch, and I would sit and I would stare at that picture, and I would feel happy. And all my friends would come over to my house, and they'd say, oh, you must want to live at the ocean. Okay. I don't know. It makes me happy. Oh, you're going to move to Malibu. Okay, it makes me happy. And then they say, well, you must want to live in the Caribbean. Okay. And I kept agreeing with people, but what was really going on internally was it made me happy to look at that picture. There was something in that image that stirred in me happiness. And a couple of years ago, I went on a trip. Something said to me, go to London. Go. You have to go to the UK. And I went, okay, I'm going to the UK. And I'm walking down the street in London. And of course, in London you dress fabulous. I love to tell the story. And I'm walking to the theater, and it's cold as beep. And, I have a coat on, and I look fabulous, my boots and the whole thing. And all of a sudden it hit me, Erica, that I felt the feeling that I felt when I looked at that picture. And I was nowhere near
Nice.
the ocean,
Yeah.
And it was an internal moment of complete happiness, but beyond happiness, it was a state of complete freedom and bliss. And
Mm.
so I think for me, happiness is defined as a sense of serenity and purpose.
Mm.
And I think my father used to say, you know, you'll never be happy all the time, but you'll be serene. And so there are moments when I'm frustrated with things, and I want to throw my cell phone across the room, or, I mean, it's like, or I want to, gesture to someone who's driving I don't appreciate. I mean, I'm a human being, I'm going to have moments when I go, woo, woo. And I think the reality is that my intention is to find that inner freedom that brings me happiness. And I can honestly tell you that I live in a beautiful home. And I know we were talking about Jeff Lewis at the beginning. I mean, Jeff did my home. It's a beautiful home. And it's worth a lot of money. And I said, and I'm going to sell it in the next few months. I'm going to sell everything, and I'm going to move to Asheville, North Carolina. I'm just going to go. I'm going to move. And everybody, my dogs decide when they want to move in. And, everybody was saying to me, oh, my God, you're so happy. Why would you? And I said, because I'm all about reinventing myself for the next adventure.
Mm.
And you have to find in you what that thing is that drives you. Like for me, it's the adventure. It's the unknown. It's the mystery within us. It's helping others find their path internally. And it was very funny. My marketing director a few days ago, she comes in. She'd gone to a party. She met a young man, an Indian young man, and they were talking. And she said, he said, what do you do? And she explained, I'm marketing director for this psychic, and she has these chakra cards, and she teaches people about their life purpose through their chakra. And he said, is she white? What could you know? It was really, and she started laughing because the whole thing is about breaking the old ideas of what we think our life should look like, what happiness is. One woman, which really gave me a lot of joy, actually. I felt very happy when I was teaching life purpose divination, and this one gal was like thinking she had this purpose, and through the whole process, she realized that her purpose was to have her children, to be a mom, to have this amazing family. And what was neat about that is not that it lowered or more or less or anything, but what it did, what that recognition did. Like she could write books, she could do other things, but the reality is that her purpose was to raise a beautiful family, which she was doing. And in that moment, what it brought her was happiness. Because it's finding ourselves that brings us happiness. It's not the getting something outside of us, right? It's realizing that who we are is enough.
Well,
and
I feel that like when you say that, and yet for me, there's also getting into alignment. So it's interesting that you're talking about moving, because as I've been looking at my next place and what it's going to feel like and what it's going to look like, it's really interesting because I've played with different images of my life, because I am an author and I am a speaker and I do make money and I am able to do kind of whatever I want. But I have 3 kids I love. And so what I saw in my mind's eye, it was interesting. It was living somewhere that was actually, I don't want to say smaller, but like calmer. It's like the right place shocked me.
Yeah.
It was like, it's the right place. I can feel it. I know it. It's the right place. I recognized it. And the interesting thing is I never thought it was the right place before, because it's so much less expensive living there than it is where I live. But, and so I think, Tori, for me, there was this like recognition of it. And in that I did go into peace, but it was also kind of, how could that be? Does that make sense? Like, because it wasn't the external, it's a different reality.
No, it is. It absolutely makes sense, and I want to validate that, because I think what happens is that, when something makes so much sense to us internally, there is a deep loneliness that occurs in that moment. Because what happens is we've gone into our inner truth, And we're creatures of connecting energetically. So when you just said to me, and when you ask that, Erica, when you say, does that make
Mm.
sense? What the key is in our life is to
Mhm.
find people in our life that validate us without telling us how it should be. So yes, it makes
Mm.
sense. Like, I just want to acknowledge that I hear you. In other words, that's real for you.
Right.
And in
And
that
and
moment,
and and yeah, and you know, I have to tell you, I resisted it because what I thought. So this is what I tell people, and it's like, it's hard to even really get your arms around it. It's not going to look exactly like you think.
well,
It's
that's
not
why,
going to feel.
remember?
Yeah,
Exactly. Well, here
it's
I am
not.
walking down the street in London, and I'm nowhere near an ocean, and I realized I'm happy. And that's the key, is that
Wow.
not is trusting myself. No, it's not Malibu for me. That doesn't mean Malibu's not fabulous. It simply means that what everybody else was trying to define as my happiness, I had an inner candle flame, right? That thing in me
Right.
that said, I'm gonna recognize it.
Right.
And people say to me, well, are you gonna date? And I said, no, I'm gonna recognize him when I meet him. He's gonna know me. I'm gonna know him. You know, the thing is that what you're talking
Well,
about,
slow down there because that was a good one because it's so true. I mean, when it's the right person, it feels night and day. It doesn't feel anything like anyone who isn't the right person. It's completely different calibration of energy. It's just,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. You know, my staff makes fun of me sometimes because I have this one story I tell, which is the one of a woman on the radio called up, and she was very, very much in upset. And she said, does he love me? And I said, who cares? You sound miserable.
Yeah, exactly.
Even in that moment, and think about it, anybody going through that right now, think about this. If I said to you, yes, he does, you're still unhappy. What I'm trying to say is, right, is that we have been taught, and I love this because I have this whole thing about beliefs are all fear-based,
Mhm.
and knowing is faith-based. It's our wisdom. So, and that goes to the chakra, which I'll talk about in a second. But the big thing is that, see, anytime we have a belief where it's based on a fear, because it means we have to create something. There's an againstness with a belief. Oh, well, I have to change my belief. Okay, go ahead and rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. You'll get a better view. So here's the thing. Years ago, I was maybe 20, and I was in a bar, a bunch of friends, and this one guy, now a famous actor, he sits there and he looks at me, he says, do you really believe this? Bleep, you do. And I said, no, I don't. I know it. And God bless him, because in that moment, he got what I meant, and he couldn't say anything back to me. See, when we have a wisdom, a knowing of ourselves, like when I look at that picture and I feel happy, that's my happiness. I recognize happy. So when happy shows up, I'm going to know what it looks like. But if I buy into everybody else's story that I need an oceanfront property, I need to be on a beach, then I'll never be happy because I have to believe what other people are telling me.
Okay, but let me just do the flip side of that, Tori. This is fun,
Nope.
okay?
Please.
I'm going to do the flip side. So
Okay.
what about if what makes us happy is wilder than we thought? Like, okay, you're saying like it was kind of not tamer, but it was different than you thought. Like, I love London too, so what could be not beautiful about that? But when you look at like, what if I walk into a house and it makes me happy and it's like the nicest house I've ever been in and it's nothing like I've ever lived in before and I feel it. And yet part of me is kind of like, how can I want this? Or it's not that. I don't know how to explain it. It's like in that space of knowing this is my truth, and yet it's different from my reality by leaps and bounds.
Well, let's talk about that then, because that issue is really, speaks to the concept of when I talk about life purpose divination. It really does, because I think the truth is that you know what's right, but one of the things I teach, and this is the biggest thing, is knowing the difference between your intuition and your mind. Your brain is always trying to protect you, right?
Right,
Your
right.
brain
It's
is
going to go
always
through, right. It's going to go through. It's going to take all your past experiences and say, how could you possibly do this, 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 and
but there's a
that? Yeah.
right, there's that. But I think it's even bigger than that, Erica, which is this. I think the brain kind of is there to guide us and protect us. So what happens? Let's put it this way. Your intuition has learned how to speak to you cryptically. So your intuition is always operating. But what happens is your intuition is operating and says, whoa, this is right. And your brain says, it's not the ocean. And you're going, oh, that's right, I can't be feeling that. So we talk ourselves out of our truth because you see, our brain is trying to say to us, no, you can't create that, so don't feel it. Right? So what happens is, what I have to do when I work with people, and especially what happened, and it's so funny, it's like I created this course, right? And I have to tell you this, it was really actually funny because I created this course thinking, okay, I'm going to create this course where it's going to be in alignment with learning to read the cards, right? And it's kind of like the guy who created Post-it notes. He was supposed to do a permanent bond, and it ended up being a temporary bond, and right? I mean, yeah, that's the true story. He really thought he failed at Post-it notes. Right? So the point is,
they only stick temporarily. Oh no, now I'm a billionaire.
yeah. Well, the thing is, he made nothing because he worked for 3M and they owned the patent. But that's another creation story. But the thing that's interesting about it is how we mark ourselves a failure, how we define certain things. And there's 3 things that I think are really key. One is the buzzwords we teach ourselves. 2 is we're always on autopilot. And 1 is our brain is designed to protect us. So those are the 3 things that I teach, right? So if you know that you're on autopilot, just to give you an example, I have a friend, she's very happy person. She's successful. She writes music, and I'm not into a lot of music, so I don't, but she just brought out her 3rd album. It's doing okay. It's doing well. But she and I were sitting in her yard a couple weeks ago, and she said, Tori, I don't get it. I said, what don't you get? She said, I'm really happy. My life is great. But why is it that this 3rd album is doing the exact same as the 1st, the exact same as the 2nd? I'm not breaking through. And I said, because you're on autopilot. Your whole life is geared to take you to the same airport no matter what plane we get on and what airport we take off from, we will always land at the same airport unless we remove the autopilot from our life.
Right.
And that's the thing about understanding how to work with our intuition and how to decipher what our intuition is saying. I do a whole thing on buzzwords because I think when I showed her how to do it, she looked at me and said, that's kind of simple. I said, absolutely. The thing is that you have to do it. The course that I teach was really interesting because people who were taking it said, this is the most amazing thing. It makes so much sense, and yet I can see my brain fighting me through the whole thing. So what happens is, so many people, Erica, say, what's the difference between my brain and my intuition? Well, they're always like this. They're always working together, and your brain is always trying to shut your intuition down. So what I do in the course is I actually suppress your brain, and I just teach you to work with your intuition through the whole course. And it's really a fascinating experience because then you start to see what your intuition is trying to tell you. And
all the time, right? All the time, every day. Every day, and every day. I have to tell you, I love this. I have a story I have to tell you. I love this story. I was sitting there in November, and I had a book come out, and it was actually on home selling. So I was really interested.
Oh, how funny!
Yeah, I was interested in having a luxury home, so I did a book on luxury homes. I know a lot of my books are like woo-woo, really yummy and woo-woo and fun. But I was really interested in owning a luxury home, and so I did a book on luxury homes with some really nice authors on luxury homes. And it was going to come out in January, and I had the launch date all planned. And I said to the book launch, I said, how can I support you? I just kind of like opened up my heart, opened up my mind, got out of my cage of it will be done on this date because this author is traveling, and this author and I had done all this perfect organizational stuff that my brain likes to do. And I woke up one morning in December and it said, launch the book today. And I went, you have got to be kidding. And it was like, no, launch the book today. Just launch the book today, launch the book today, launch the book today. And I went, and I had done this meditation on having all my authors become bestsellers. And I was like, well, okay. So I sent it out to 20 authors and I said, we're going to do our book launch today. And we landed number 5. And the book is actually still best-selling. It's been best-selling now for 3 months. It hasn't left the bestseller. And if I hadn't opened up to that, it's like if I had just said, we're scheduled January 15th, we're all set, I've got my cookie cutter plans in place, we're going to launch bestseller. And it's not that that would have been wrong, but I was just shown so brightly to do it that day. And it could have been a perfect day. It must have been a day when people weren't buying other books in that category, right? It just happened to be one of those days. And so I was able to do it. And I have to say, when the intuition struck, I have to say it was, even though I believe in everything you're teaching and everything you're telling, when it turns into meaning, I have to actually change my behaviors and go completely out of comfort zone and face judgment from others. It's like, whoa, it's not it's like you're saying this and it sounds really easy, but when you're actually listening, there's something else in a manifestation of it.
But I think there's something you're saying too, which I think I really want to address, which is that, you're talking about being a pioneer. And you're talking about being a person who really listens and says, I'm going to do this now. And those of us who can do that, that's super. But you know what? Most people really like the community to do it with. And one of the things I discovered when I was working with Life Purpose Divination was that exact thing is that what you're talking about, imagine if you have, other like-minded people who get what you're talking about and can support you in it. That's what happens with this course. At the last minute, Erica, I put a private Facebook group together, right? Just so we can support each other through, because it's a 7-week drip process. So you get the stuff, and then you do the exercises, and people were sharing, and I'm very active on the board too, because I'm sharing with people. The point I'm making is that when people came up against what you're talking about, that idea of it's got to go today, they had other people going, do it. I affirm that. You're right.
Nice.
And so what I'm saying is that what you're talking about is the idea that those of us who've done it have done it alone for so long. And if you've tried to launch or you've tried to do things that have not maybe, you feel like you're spending more time trying to get enlightenment than be enlightened, get happiness than be happy, I feel like so much of the time, I can't even tell you. I had a neighbor who was just, she taught at the local church. She just taught Sunday school. And meanwhile, when it was torrential rain and I had a house guest who was locked out, she basically told him he could wait in the laundry room for 3 hours for me. She had the key to my apartment. Anyway, the point is that, sometimes it's like we do so much, but we forget to activate it.
Nice.
And I think that's the key, is that it's about activating it. And so what you're talking about is really not being alone in what you're talking. You know what I mean? In this whole process.
Right.
It's really about and that was the amazing thing about this experience for me too, is that every time I teach a class, every time I'm in it, even if it's out there virtually, because this is a virtual class and people get it each week. But the thing is that right from the beginning, the first thing is all about, here's why you're intuitive and I'm going to prove it to you. And in the first week, people go, whoa, I am intuitive.
Right.
And then once that's affirmed, once we start that as a base, then what you're talking about, when people get those moments of waking up and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm completely feeling lost, they post it on the Facebook page and people were like, I get you. And it was just people from all over the world were validating complete strangers because they were in this process together. And that's the difference, is that for me, what you're talking about, it's the same thing. The difference is that you're doing it, you've been doing it alone. And it is not easy to be the pioneer, to say, I'm going to publish this. You know, I self-published color wisdom cards, spent my life savings. It was crazy what I did. Would I do it again? Yeah, it was my journey. I had to, you know. You have to do what Spirit calls you to do, or you will get sick. And I feel that's really what dis-ease is, when we deny ourselves. You know, when we deny who we are, and if you deny who you are long enough, your body will fight back.
You know, that's really strange that you said dis-ease, because the next question I was going to ask you was about kind of ease, because what I've been noticing in my life, and just even since I started doing the Happiness Telesummit interviews, because I know, you know, I start them in January, and they start changing me, which is so much fun. And I've been present to a lot more ease in my life. So tell me a little bit about that ease, that like, oh, I'm moving to Ashley, I'm blah, blah, blah. You know, tell me a little bit about the ease and kind of that, like how much easier it is than people actually think.
Oh, let me tell you something. There is such, if you can imagine happiness squared, there is a wonderment when you step into trusting that, like you said. You know, what you didn't say, I want to just share this with your listeners too, is that what you didn't say is that when you said we're going to launch it, there was an explosion of fireworks in the universe that said yes around you. See, what people forget is that, you know, they're just saying, oh my gosh, how can you take that risk? But the reality is that, wait a minute, it's like it's all an adventure. You know, my father was a World War II vet, and he jumped on D-Day. And he had this little tattered sign over his desk, and it said, it's just on a, you know, an old, I don't know, index card, and it said, life is an adventure to be lived, not a problem to be solved.
Wow.
And I think ultimately, you know, if we look at it as, I'm very grateful for this house, I'm very grateful for everything I have, I'm very grateful to have had this experience. But you know what the difference is? I'm not afraid of it all going away, because I have me. And ultimately, you know, I got my dogs, they're great, you know. And the thing is that I had to learn that. I had to learn that, because then wherever I go, my next adventure, I want to go whitewater rafting on weekends. I want to go tubing. I want to do all the things that I can do in the East Coast. I want to get a different perspective on life. Los Angeles has been great to me. I'm from New York. I've seen the two coasts. Now let me see some other things.
How fun. That is so exciting.
Very exciting. And I think that we forget sometimes that it's like the most dangerous thing we can do is get into any kind of situation where we're afraid of losing what we have. Because there are really only two fears in life: not getting what we have and losing what it's not. What is
not getting what you want,
and losing what you have.
Yeah.
And you know, if I have both of those already, like, okay, then I created this, I can create the next thing.
Right. I love it. Well, tell us again. We have a link right here on the page to Tori's class, so everyone can sign up right now to the Life Divination.
Life Purpose Divination.
Life Purpose Divination. So you can sign up right here, and maybe just take us out with some other insight or intuition that shows up for my beautiful listeners.
I think the thing that I want to leave everybody with is this thought, which was given to me years ago, and I still live by it. And that is that you absolutely know what will happen if you do nothing, but you really don't know what will happen if you take a risk. And it's up to you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. That was beautiful.
Thank you.